notepad open and pencil poised. Gaia, you said? Gaia Lindquist? A quick nod, her lips drawing in. Why don't we start with what has brought you here today? The visitor exhaled noisily, staring down at the plate, eyes heavy with liner. Perhaps the cookies were to blame, Clara mused. Maybe the black-bedecked girl had an eating disorder she hoped Becca could help her with. Or maybe she was in mourning, the inky coloring all over her face signaling some kind of enchantment. Becca, the cat's person, had started advertising her services as a witch detective only a few months prior. But what that actually meant was open to interpretation. Does she think Becca can counter a spell? Clara pondered this with growing alarm as her oldest sister edged closer to the tray. I hope Becca hasn't promised that she can cast one. Harriet licked the nearest cookie, her tongue darting out as quick as could be, but still the visitor didn't react. When she finally looked up at Becca, the unpainted parts of her face were deadly pale. I think someone wants to use the craft against me, she said. Even Harriet paused, pink tongue slightly visible, as she and her sisters watched to see how their person would respond. Becca was a normal young woman, after all, despite Clara's secret belief that her person's diminutive stature hid a great spirit. But the good-natured brunette who opened their cans didn't respond with the promise of remedial witchcraft, to the calico's relief. Nor did she react with the kind of shock or horror or even disbelief that many of her peers would. Although her eyebrows rose slightly, she only nodded and continued to write. Very well, she said, as if to herself before addressing her visitor once more. And would you tell me how someone is attempting to use magic against you? With a nod, the young woman reached into another pocket, extracting a plastic bag that she held up for display. This, she said. I found it in my mug. All three cats recoiled as the musty scent spread, and Laurel positively smirked. Becca, being more visually oriented than her pets, reached for the baggie and held it up to the light as if admiring the knobby root within. Do you know what this is? Becca turned it around, examining it as Clara forced herself to move closer. It looks like ginger, or maybe ginseng? I wish, the visitor said with a dismissive snort. It's wolfsbane. You know, monkshood, aconite. You're sure? Becca took in her visitor, though whether her eyes had widened in skepticism or alarm, her cat couldn't tell. Of course, I'm studying to be an herbalist, and I know a poison when I see one. The visitor clicked her tongue as if her profession were too obvious for words, showing off the glint of a tongue stud in the process. I work at Charm and Cherish. Of course, Becca nodded. Clara knew her person had visited the little shop outside Central Square. Most recently, she had emerged with the pretty blue stone pendant she now wore. But even though the little calico often tagged along after her person on her errands, she rarely accompanied her inside. Packed to the rafters, literally, with all things Wiccan, the tiny storefront always smelled too strongly of strange dried plants and scented candles for the sensitive feline's comfort. I knew I recognized you. That's how I got your number, her visitor went on. I saw your notice on our community board, the one about witch detective. I figure if someone's coming after me using the craft, you're the one who can help. Becca nodded, and Clara, who loved her, could see the play of conflicting emotions across her face. I understand, she said at last. She spoke slowly, as if she were still figuring out what to say. And I have worked on several cases already, but this is serious. And this is more than a simple spell or hex. If you really think someone is trying to poison...